lower and lower, and we can see down there that the U.S. Constitution was 1 pixel ago. The big deal there is that science happened about 400 years ago. And so the world that we live in is a world that was artificially constructed. Virtually everything that we do in our world rests on these arbitrary artificial inventions that were very, very hard to invent. And so if we come in here, anthropologists, of course, once they start writing down universals, they start writing down things that not every society have. Most societies, for instance, don't have even the idea of progress. We are actually set up genetically to cope. Most people have lived and died on this earth without ever learning to read and write, and so on and on. Like one of the trickiest ones is equal rights. So there's no known traditional society on the planet that has ever been known to have the idea of equal rights. Maybe different roles. Women are usually the scapegoats, but in fact children have no rights in most societies, and slavery is still with us, I hate to tell you. There could be as many as 20 million slaves in the world today. So this stuff, these blue guys over here are really tricky. And by the way, the blue guys are what we need school for. Schools were invented to deal with the blue guys. Why? Because they're hard to learn. So if we go from universals to non-universals, we get something that's more like a traditional bell curve. Only a tiny percentage for anything, any of these guys, tiny percentage is strongly disposed to learn those guys. Why? Because they're hard to invent. You just don't think of them just walking around, and most of them are not visible in society in a way that is actually... Dewey made this point. He said a little girl in Africa 100,000 years ago, or a little boy in Africa 100,000 years ago, saw the parents out doing what adults do, and they could do it. So the adult might go after a lion, but the kid could go after a squirrel. The adult might bring back some large vegetation, fruit and stuff. The kids can bring back some of it. So the kids and the adults were in the same world. But Dewey pointed out that a little girl in a nurse's uniform pretending to nurse a baby is only imitating the form, but none of the content of what adults do in the 20th century. And this is true for most things in the 20th century. So the kids are now living in a different world, and so we have school to help them learn it. And so the dilemma here of Jefferson's way of looking at things is our schooling for the important things has to ignore the fact that most people are not strongly disposed towards learning these things. Our schooling system requires 80 to 85% of the population to become fluent in reading and writing. And as I'll hope to show you in a second, to become fluent in scientific thinking. But the disposition of the population is completely against this, and the schools have a very hard time dealing with the fact that there's not just one target population who can learn things one way or another. This is a huge, huge problem. And it was an easier problem to solve when parents were part of the schooling process, because you have a better student-teacher ratio when parents are involved. But once the parents have been through bad education cycles for a few generations, you get one of these situations where hardly anybody can help. Here's another traditional deduction. It's one of the favorite ones, and we had an entire administration in Washington for the previous 8 years that, so what I'm saying is having the veneer of civilization doesn't wipe any of this stuff away. Schooling doesn't wipe this stuff away. It just gives you alternatives to choose from. Our nervous system is always going to take the world as it seems, because some things we can't be philosophical about. Like when we're stepping off a curb and we see a car coming at us, we don't want to sit there and do the nice, slow thinking, well, that car is really composed mostly of empty space, and et cetera, and maybe it will just pass right through me and all that stuff. And no, you don't even want what to do to go up into your brain. You want a spinal reflex that will get you the hell back away. And so we always have these. So the insight here has come in different times and different histories. I actually have a collection of them because it's really interesting. I love this one from the Talmud. We see things not as they are, but as we are. This is a biggie. One of the best put over the years. Even the Greeks never put it any better than this. And I'd give anything to know what happened to the person who came up with this idea. Did this person follow this idea to its logical conclusion in the context that he came up with it? What happened? But so when you have a big idea, there's a possibility for a powerful idea. And so Newton was the most powerful midwife of this idea. Create relationships between careful observations and human-made models, which can lead to better observations, models, and relationships. Not very sexy, but probably the most important idea that humans have ever had. Why? Okay, so I apologize for this, but I was looking for a hairball. And I was thinking a cat hairball. In fact, I was waiting around patiently for my cat to give me one, and for some reason, she just wouldn't perform. But I found this online, and this is actually a hairball. This is big. It's a hairball from a woolly mammoth that was defrosted, and they found this in its stomach. So but basically, science is about being given a hairball and trying to figure out what it is in some form. And so just so I can get your attention back, I'm going to change the hairball to the cosmos here.
That's all you got, Alan.
That's all it is. See, the problem with science is not the problem of being curious when you're given phenomena. Our problem as human beings is that we're just completely too willing to settle for dumb explanations. We ask a question that's really profound. Children ask profound questions all the time. Tell them a simple story and they're happy. That's the problem with the human race. That's why it took us 189,000 years to invent science, is because all of our curiosity about the world was damped out by our predilection for apt stories. And of course, stories contradict each other. So the way we do this is we've got this phenomena that we can look at directly, and we can use instruments. And inside of our brains, we have the ability to make models of things. And actually, all of these models go down to a single logical operation, which I will not talk to you about, but it's kind of cool that there's just the logical operation is called not both. And from that, you can build every language ever invented, and you can build every computer that we could ever conceive of. So it's wonderful that there's kind of a logical atom that we can make language things from. And kind of what we try and do is to make a T-shirt out of our representations in the way we can think about it that somehow matches up to this phenomena. And so those are the questions. And I think I've done this diagram in a way to cast doubt on whether the T-shirt is the complete explanation of the phenomena, which in science it is thought that the T-shirt is not. And there are many reasons for thinking that it can never be. But the important thing about science is that we've learned how to make the T-shirts close enough for really interesting things. And most things are not as pretty as Maxwell's equations. They're actually in very complicated systems. And so we can augment, using the very same logical operations, we can make language machines, which we call computers. And the bigger the computer, the more clear and the more level